Welcome to the deep dive. We take a look at key sources, break them down, and give you the essential insights fast.
Hoping you get up to speed quickly.
Exactly. And today we're diving into something pretty significant, especially, if you're keeping an eye on current events for the UPSC exam.
Ah, yes. The Office of the Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha.
That's the one. We've looked at some constitutional analysis and what's been happening recently, specifically this long vacancy in the post.
It's definitely been noticeable.
Right. So you might have noticed it too, the deputy speaker position just sitting empty. What does that actually mean for Indian democracy? Let's get into it.
Okay. Well, the first thing to look at is the Constitution itself, Article 93.
Article 93, right. And it seems pretty direct, doesn't it?
It really does. It says the House shall, as soon as may be, choose both a speaker and a deputy speaker. The key words there are shall and as soon as may be.
Shall, meaning it's not optional, it's a mandate.
Precisely. And as soon as may be. Well, that strongly implies urgency, doesn't it? It suggests this needs to happen promptly, not, whenever. It's not really meant to be discretionary over years.
Yeah, the analysis we read really hammers that home. And then there's Article 94 as well.
Right, which kind of reinforces this idea of continuity. It talks about how the speaker and deputy speakers stay in office until various conditions like resignation or removal, or until the next House sits.
So the framers were clearly thinking about avoiding any gaps in leadership.
Absolutely. They wanted to prevent any kind of disruption. It seems they saw this structure as fundamental.
And this isn't some new idea, is it? The office has roots going way back.
It does. Its history actually goes back to colonial times, 1921, with the deputy president of the Central Legislative Assembly. Sachidanand Sinha was the first.
Ah, okay. So the Constituent Assembly looked at this existing rule.
And consciously decided to keep it post-independence. They saw its value, its importance for Parliament to function properly. It wasn't just like a leftover. It was a deliberate choice.
It signals they really understood the need for that backup and continuity.
Exactly. There's a really clear example of why it matters in practice.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 1956,
Yeah.
the Speaker, G.V. Mavalinkar, sadly passed away in office.
Oh, I remember reading about that.
And his deputy, M.A. Iyengar, just stepped right in as acting Speaker. Seamless transition.
So no leadership crisis, no pause in proceedings.
None. It just showed how vital having someone ready and able in that deputy role really is. It kept the House functioning.
That makes sense. It's not just the stand-in role then.
Not at all. And people like S.C. Kashyap, the constitutional expert, have pointed this out. The Speaker's job is huge. It's almost impossible for one person to handle everything all the time.
So the deputy speaker is crucial for just sharing the load.
Definitely. They help manage the sheer volume of work, keep things moving.
What kind of responsibilities are we talking about specifically?
Well, presiding over House sittings when the Speaker's absent, obviously, but also chairing parliamentary committees, guiding debates, ensuring order, basically acting as a neutral referee.
Neutrality is key then, just like the speaker.
Yes, absolutely. Once elected, the expectation is that they rise above party politics and act impartially for the good of the House. That's crucial for trust in the proceedings.
And isn't there also a convention about who gets the post? Something about the opposition?
Ah, yes. That's a very significant convention, even though it's not, written down in the Constitution or a law.
What's the convention exactly?
Traditionally, the post of the deputy speaker is offered to a member from the opposition ranks.
Okay, and why is that done?
It's seen as a way to foster a sense of bipartisanship. It helps build trust, encourages a more consensus-based approach. It gives the opposition a stake in the House's functioning.
So it's more than just politeness. It serves a democratic purpose.
Definitely. It's about ensuring broader representation in the leadership structure, which can, in theory, help smooth over some partisan friction.
Which makes the current situation even more striking.
It really does. Because, as the analysis highlights, the office was vacant for the entire 17th Lok Sabha.
From 2019 to 2024, the whole term.
The entire term. And it's still vacant now in the 18th Lok Sabha. That's unprecedented.
Wow. So how does that square with Article 93's as soon as may be? Years don't exactly sound like as soon as may be.
It certainly stretches the interpretation, doesn't it? Letting it go for years seems, quite far from the original intent of ensuring promptness and continuity.
What are the potential downsides of this long vacancy?
Well, one concern is the centralization of power. All the procedural authority rests solely with the Speaker's office. It potentially weakens the internal checks and balances.
And you mentioned the crisis scenario earlier.
Exactly. What if the speaker resigns suddenly or becomes ill? Without a deputy speaker already in place and familiar with the role, you could face real uncertainty, maybe even a temporary paralysis of the House.
That sounds serious.
It could be. And then there's the convention aspect we just discussed.
Not offering the post to the opposition.
Right. When that convention isn't followed, it can be seen as undermining that spirit of consensus, maybe eroding some goodwill between the government and opposition.
The analysis we looked at called this a departure from constitutional morality. Can you explain that term a bit?
Sure. Constitutional morality isn't just about following the written rules, the black and white letter of the law. It's more about adhering to the spirit, the underlying principles, the unwritten norms that make the whole system work.
Like respecting conventions.
Exactly. Things like the convention of offering the deputy speaker post to the opposition that's often cited as an example of constitutional morality in practice. Ignoring it raises questions beyond just the strict legal text.
So given this situation, what's the way forward? Are people talking about reforms?
Yes. The issue has prompted discussion on how to prevent this kind of prolonged vacancy again. A couple of ideas have been floated.
Such as?
One is a potential constitutional amendment to actually write in a strict deadline.
Like, say, the election must happen within 60 days of the first sitting.
Something like that, yeah. A fixed mandatory time frame. That would certainly add teeth to as soon as may be.
Makes sense. What's the other idea?
The other is maybe a statutory change, a law. This could empower the president, acting on the government's advice, of course, to step in and initiate the election process if the House itself doesn't act within a certain period.
So a mechanism to trigger the election if the House delays.
Precisely. Both ideas are aimed at closing what seems to be a loophole and ensuring the deputy speaker's office doesn't remain vacant indefinitely. It's about protecting the institution.
Because ultimately this isn't just a procedural detail.
Not at all. As the analysis strongly argues, the deputy speaker's office is a constitutional safeguard. It's vital for a well-functioning, resilient parliamentary democracy.
So leaving it vacant isn't just neglecting a tradition, it's potentially weakening the system itself.
That's the argument. It can be seen as undermining the Constitution's framework and diminishing that democratic resilience.
So for you listening, especially if you're preparing for the UPSC exams, understanding this whole issue around the deputy speaker is really important.
Absolutely. It touches on core aspects of Indian polity, constitutional provisions, conventions, parliamentary functioning, potential reforms. It's relevant for prelims and definitely for mains.
It shows how interpretation and practice of the Constitution matter just as much as the text itself.
Right. And the timely election of the deputy speaker, as the Hindu article put it, becomes a kind of test, doesn't it? A test of Parliament's commitment to following the rules and upholding constitutional principles.
Especially important now, with democratic institutions facing challenges globally.
Indeed.
So the key takeaway here is that this deputy speaker vacancy is, well, it's a bigger deal than it might seem at first glance.
Yeah.
It has real implications for constitutional adherence and how our democracy works.
It certainly does. And maybe a final thought for you to ponder, connecting back to that idea of constitutional morality.
Okay.
Beyond the deputy speaker role, what other unwritten conventions do you think are really crucial for Indian democracy to function smoothly? And what happens when those conventions start to fray?
That's a really good question. Definitely something to think about further.
Food for thought.
Absolutely. Well, if you found this deep dive helpful, please do like, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment with your thoughts or any other questions you have on this.
We'd love to hear from you.
And just to mention, the core analysis and points we discussed today were drawn from reporting in the Hindu. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.